Hello and welcome. If this is your first video with me, hi, happy to have you here. My name is Adrielle, and this is actually video 3 of a 3-part series in which I am sharing how I was able to generate a 6-figure consulting and coaching business in just 6 months. Last year, I worked with about 18 clients over the course of 6 months, which I would not recommend. But since then, I've adjusted my workload, and of course, I've tried to limit the amount of context switching that I do day to day. That's probably content for another video and for another day. But in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 things that I did to attract and retain clients and to ultimately start generating revenue or income for my business. So first, number 1 is holding yourself accountable, right? I had to hold myself accountable. You can always ask friends, you can ask family, you can ask a coach, a therapist, a significant other, whomever, right? To hold you accountable. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to find and really lock into whatever it is that's going to drive you forward, that's going to keep you gradually chipping away at your goals. That has to be some internal work that you do on yourself. If historically you've had issues sticking to your goals or perhaps managing your time, now is the time to start to understand the root cause of that behavior, right? And to ultimately, figure out what tools or resources or help or whatever it may be that you need that will help you stay on top of things. Typically when we take on a new job or a new role for someone else, there are managers, there are additional team members, perhaps even leaders who are holding us accountable, right? But when you work for yourself, especially as an independent consultant, you don't have that luxury. So it's so important that you identify the things that are going to keep you on track, that are going to keep you motivated, that are going to keep you going so that you can hold yourself accountable for building your business. Okay, number 2, I figured out my business structure and my systems really early on. Now, what do I mean by that? I didn't sit down and write what most people would consider to be a, traditional business plan, but I did create a document in which I outlined in as much detail as possible the structure of my business and the various processes that I wanted to implement or have in place. So, for example, when it comes to coaching, when I do my career coaching, I have a fairly succinct step-by-step coaching process that I've built out that I'll roughly follow for each candidate. Client. I was working on a hiring and recruiting project before this video. I have a process that I've built out for my coaching clients. And again, it's a rough framework. Of course, everybody has their unique needs, so I customize it, but I knew that I wanted to follow that rough process. So I built that out pretty early on. And since then, I've just been iterating on it, meaning I've just been reworking it and tweaking it based on client feedback and experiences that I have with clients. So that's just one of the things that you want to have in place are, systems and processes before you actually start to reach out or even talk to clients. I also figured out a filing system, if you will, very early on. So to keep myself organized, I have a variety of folders that I have organized by category and by client or by project in some ways, all virtually. And I also use my calendar religiously. I have a color coding system that I use to organize different events and tasks within my calendar. And finally, one of my favorite, productivity tools or actions is Inbox Zero. I know that doesn't work for everyone, but it's something that works really well for me. And if you're not familiar, Inbox Zero is an approach to managing your emails in which you are constantly trying to maintain an empty or at least a near empty inbox. At this point, I'm a one-woman show. It's impossible for me to maintain an empty Inbox Zero 24/7. So what I do is that, what I do though is I always try to hit Inbox Zero at least once or twice a week, because that way I know that I'm not missing out on any clients. It allows me to stay on top of tasks. Any sort of important tax or business notifications that come through, I've seen them, right? I don't have to worry about missing those or or seeing them 2-3 weeks later because I didn't have a chance to get to my inbox. So again, these resources and tools that I'm sharing with you that worked for me, they may not work for you, right? But my point is, by sharing this, is to just simply emphasize how important it is to stay organized and to find tools that work for you, that can make you more productive and can ultimately help you build up your business by just being more efficient. Work smarter, not harder. Step 3, know your worth. Make sure that you do your research, right, and your due diligence, and charge for your services and your offerings accordingly. There are actually more consultants out there than you probably think who are more than willing to not only help you figure out your pricing structure, but they may even be willing to share their pricing and their structures with you. So don't be afraid to ask people who are already doing the work that you want to do to understand how they're charging, right, how they're structuring their pricing and their fees. And know that this is your business. So at any point, you can adjust your pricing or your pricing model. I mean, who's gonna check you? Don't worry, I'll wait. Okay, enough. And of course, you want to always make sure that your pricing is fair and ethical, and you want it to be properly aligned to your industry, your experience, and your ideal client's budget. So if you don't have a sense of that, make sure you do your research. Figure out all of those things. You want to answer or have as many answers as possible as you move forward with building out your business. Always be transparent and upfront with your clients about cost, and always, if I could add another always in there, always document things. Document your agreed upon rates with your clients, either in a statement of work or another document that you both can sign. And the last thing that I'll offer up here is, as a DEI consultant, so this is specifically for people going into this area, I have to share that I have been asked a number of times by a good handful of people, maybe 2 handfuls of people, if there's any wiggle room or flexibility on my pricing. And my answer is always no. And there's so much more that I can say about that, but I won't go into too much detail. It comes down to just simply knowing my worth. I know that my pricing is fair. I know that it's competitive and up to par with someone with my experience and level of expertise. And so asking me to lower my pricing is pretty much kind of just devaluing me and my work and the offerings that I have that I can share with other people. So know your worth and stick up for yourself whenever someone questions your pricing, right? And that's part of doing your research is if someone questions, hey, why are you charging this much for this thing? Here you go. This is why, because this is the industry. Here, what other competitors are charging. Here's my experience, my credentials, whatever it is, right? Have that ready to go. And, even if you need to practice having these types of conversations to prepare yourself in, the event that you have to manage them, do that. Reach out to a mentor or a peer or a trusted friend or whoever and practice having these conversations so that you're prepared and you feel confident and ready to respond or react to clients. Now, the fourth thing that I did, and I know this initially is going to sound a little contradictory to what I just talked about, but I did some free work. Yeah, free work. Pro bono, if you will. I did a few speaking engagements, such as webinars. I was on a panel. I also contributed to a few articles and podcasts. Now, let me explain why I did this. When I was initially doing my research on structuring my coaching business, I came across a business consultant named Terry Rice. And he had a webinar in which he spoke about how much money you could generate by doing a few free speaking engagements. Now, I'm sure you're wondering how, you're doing free work and you're getting paid for it? Here it is. You're not going to get paid upfront in that moment, right? But by doing free work, free speaking engagements, putting your name out there in an article, it's a great way to expose potential clients to your work and your expertise. So volunteering your time, for example, to speak on a panel or a webinar that has your ideal client as part of the audience is a great way for you to start attracting clients. It's a great way to just more naturally do sales in a way. And like I said, you only have to do a few of these engagements. It could be webinars, podcasts, interviews, articles. You could also have your name added to lists. For example, last year, someone added my name to a list of Black DEI consultants. That was a great way for me to pull in clients. I have a handful of clients that reached out to me simply because they saw me on that list or because they attended a webinar that I spoke at or a panel that I spoke on. So it's a really, really easy way to put your name out there and to have people introduced to your work versus you having to, take on a more traditional sales tactic of actively seeking out clients and doing that kind of pitchy stuff. I don't know. I'm not a fan of doing those things. So I like to rely on referrals and connections and my network to build my clientele or build my client base. Okay, so the fifth and final thing that I did to start and to continue generating clients and revenue was that I knew, and I continue to know, what the heck I'm talking about. I don't share this to be egotistical or to try to sound like a know-it-all or like I'm full of myself, but as a consultant, as a thought partner who is being paid for work, paid to help people further develop their DEI strategies, initiatives, cultural competency, etc., I have to know what I'm talking about. I'm constantly, as I shared in the last video, I'm constantly learning, always making sure that I am keeping my material and my content up to date, making sure that my approach to my work is relevant. And I always aim to present my best work, right? Which has, I think, been one of the biggest factors in my existing clients referring other clients to me, right? They recognize that I know what I'm talking about. I have something actionable, things that I can provide them with, tasks that they can do to actually improve in this area of DEI, and the results speak for themselves, and they then share that with their colleagues, their friends, their peers, and that in turn is kind of cyclical. It brings me new clients and new work. And one additional thing that I've found to be really helpful for landing clients is to have some sort of material or collateral that you can easily and quickly give to potential clients that tells them a few things. It tells them, who you are, what you do, your services, your offerings, how you can help support them, and any other relevant information, such as, a case study, for example, of you doing similar work, or even including your pricing for that particular client. So early on, one thing that I noticed was when I started interacting with clients, I'd have this usually an initial phone conversation, and at the end of the call, they would almost always ask me if I had some sort of follow-up material to highlight or share how I can best support them. Now, you're not going to land every single client that you talk to, so it's exhausting to sit there and type every single time, at the conclusion of a meeting, a summary, if you will, of who you are, your offerings, how you can support them. So what I did was I ended up creating a presentation deck with all of the information that clients frequently ask me for, right? So I have my bio in there, my service offerings, pricing, sample agendas of workshops if the client is seeking a workshop. And it's something that I can quickly and easily customize for any client, export it as a PDF, and quickly turn it around to them, right? Email it off within an hour of our initial call. It not only gives the client what they want and what they need, but I've noticed that not many independent consultants do this. And it really is a great way to stand out and sort of just set yourself apart from the masses. A polished document or piece of collateral that showcases your work is really valuable. And last but not least, what I'll say about this final step of kind of knowing what I'm talking about is initially and throughout all of my client engagements, I ask a lot of questions. Not only try to identify how I can best support them, but I also like to be able to reflect that back to them and let them know that I know what I'm talking about as early on as possible. Initially, when I started, I even had a sort of template or bank of questions that I'd quickly kind of piece together, customize for each client before our call, and I kind of go down that list and ask those questions and just take notes. That's just one technique that has worked for me. It may be something you want to try. You may have a different approach. Explore, test out different things. These were 5 steps or actions that I took to actually start generating and maintaining my clients and revenue. And just to quickly recap, the first step was that I established some accountability for myself. Number 2 was that I got myself hyper organized. I figured out my business structure and my systems really early on. Number 3 is that I came to know and stick up for my worth, my value. Number 4 was that I did some free work, took on some pro bono engagements to just get my name and my work out there so that potential clients could start to see who I am and what I can bring to the table. And then 5, just have a really deep understanding of the subject and the area that I'm working within. I do my best to educate myself on a regular basis, to keep up with latest trends, update the content whenever I'm presenting something to a client so that it remains relevant and most beneficial to the people that I am supporting. So that's it for this series. I hope that this has been really helpful, even if you just took away one one new piece of information, I deem that as a win. So let me know if you have any questions or comments about this video. I'm also open to suggestions for future content, so please let me know what would be helpful for me to share out with you. And finally, please like and subscribe for future updates. Thank you again for watching and for supporting me and my content. I hope to see you all again here soon. Take care.